Hey guys, this is Motorsport and welcome to another video. Today I'll be just giving you like the weekly news roundup on my channel. Hopefully I'll be doing this every Friday for the foreseeable future, obviously to get you through the highs and lows of lockdown, obviously having all that extra free time but then wondering what you can do it with, watching my videos. So I will basically just be doing a few slight light stories that have been in the news recently. There haven't really been like any big off the press releases recently, so it will just be me just discussing what I've personally found out about what's happened in the news of the last week, and any important opinions that I have about it I will give to you guys during the video. So let's get started. So first of all, the chances of Ferrari challenging are unlikely to come at the start of the 2020 season. Now we know that Mattia Binotto has said in testing that the chances of them actually being able to challenge for a world title this season are at least going to be delayed by a few races at the start of the season, but it'll be interesting to see how that is actually affected by the delay at the start. Obviously, because we've seen that Ferrari are always quite quick out of the block sometimes, and they can actually lose it sort of towards the end of the season. We saw that in 2017 with Vettel's campaign, where he was really fast in like the building blocks of the season in Australia, Bahrain. No one really judges the pace based on those races, but then as we get to races such as Abu Dhabi and Brazil, he's sort of tailed off in pace a little bit and the Mercedes just ran away with it. And that was kind of the same story in 2018, although I think Vettel's challenge in 2017 was a bit more sort of spread over the season, whereas 2018 it was more sort of centered towards the start, and then towards the end he was mainly just getting podiums and making kind of uncharacteristic mistakes, you would say, back then, considering his ability. But now they're a bit of a meme. You see a lot of memes by like F1 Fun For You just sitting there and just like presenting memes of him spinning all sorts into the barrier and just like hard life music, and You Spin Me Right Around. Who doesn't love that song? But anyway, Vettel went on to say, right now we are in lockdown phase and we don't know how long it will be, that before a lot of businesses reopen. Whenever we will start again means that it's safe to do so, and obviously the time until that then wasn't time to develop the car. It was time to shut down and take the right measures. He also went on to say, I would expect the same picture as to when we left testing. So basically he's expecting the same sort of like continuation of the car's performance from testing. And from what Mattia said, you know, I mean, in the past he's spoke very vocally of the car's abilities, especially in 2018 and 2019. He thought the car was genuine on pace, it was going to challenge for a title, but then obviously in 2019 it kind of crapped out a little bit and didn't really achieve its full potential in the hands of Charles Leclerc and Sebastian Vettel. But hopefully they'll get the maximum out of the cars, and obviously Leclerc being inexperienced is understandable if he makes a few mistakes, and then Vettel just making this uncharacteristic errors, like in Abu Dhabi in qualifying, I think it was last year. He was on the last it was on the last corner and he just ran wide, and I think he span it. I think it was in Q1. He span it, just missed the barrier. But yeah, that was a rookie error, and it's things like that that are costing him the ability. I mean, I don't have any doubt that Vettel has the speed to challenge for a title, but it's those kind of rookie errors and uncharacteristic mistakes of a four-time world champion that's costing him. So we get on to the second report, a news report in our little vlog here. It says Norris is preparing for the shock of getting back into F1 car at the start of the season. And I mean, of course he should be. He's not driven a Formula 1 car for about 8 months. It's gonna like really be a shock to him, a wake up call when he just gets in the car and he just feels those sudden G-forces like he's just driving into the middle of a tornado. And not only that, but obviously because you've got to get used to the differences in speed that you don't get in a simulator, obviously, because a lot of the Formula 1 drivers have been doing esports recently. They've been really used to just sitting back in their chair, just cruising around for about 10 hours driving. But then when they actually get into it, then they have to take into account all like the headwinds and tailwinds and understeer and oversteer. And then when it comes to that, their arms and their neck and all the vital parts of their muscles are going to be really aching, and they're just going to be really struggling to actually like drive the car for an entire race distance, maybe let alone even a qualifying lap, which is going to be at full pace, going into corners at maximum peak G-forces, and then coming out of them at God knows what speeds. But Norris went on to say, I've been focusing on things that I can focus on, which is my training physically, trying to keep that up from pre-season testing, especially because when you go back into the driving, it's going to be a shock for the body. To be able to go from doing nothing, not even testing or driving an F3 car on any car of any sort, it's literally going from driving a road car, and I'm not even done that much, to jumping onto one of the fastest cars in the world, pulling X amount of G-forces around the corner. It's a big shock. He then went on to say, the body changes and gets used to driving the car. You can do all the training you want at home with the next exercises, but the movement when you jump into a Formula 1 car, you can't replicate identically in training, which is obviously a characteristic part of training. Obviously, you're trying to work all your vital muscles, your biceps, your triceps, all those kind of things. You can only do that with a certain number of weights. You can't just like force your body into peak forces in a stationary position, or you're probably going to do damage to your muscles. And then he also went on to say, it's a shock to everyone's body, but you can be one of the fittest guys in Formula 1 or the world, but it's still tough on the human body. And honestly, like, I don't know how they keep up their levels of fitness. Usually have to do about 4 to 6 hours of training a day. Carlos Sainz, I think, did a vlog on Instagram, so if you're interested in how they're keeping up with fitness, maybe you should go and check that one out. I find it quite interesting actually how they actually are keeping up these levels of fitness, because obviously they are driving at the peak of their ability in their 30s, and when you're younger it's really hard to like get used to training, obviously, because your muscles aren't maybe not even mature enough for it, you know, because like some drivers start in Formula 1 at 18. We've seen with like Max Verstappen started at 17 in Toro Rosso, so I doubt that he like physically was at the peak of his powers at that point. He could have had a lot more potential for training and getting a lot more muscle mass, and easily been able to cope with the G-forces a lot better, and not only that, but be able to go for longer amount of distances without getting too tired, which is what we've seen with Lewis. You know, he's on these vegan diets, but that could be one thing that's putting him out of breath. Usually, I think it was like the start of 2019 when he did like his lap in Australia. I think he came on the radio and he was heavily breathing after qualifying because it was such a good lap. But then he just came on the radio and it was just like breathing and panting, and it was really, it was like the calling card of like a mega athlete. Once you know you've got every single thing out of yourself, that's how you know you're a really good driver and you're a worthy champion. And especially in qualifying, because that requires the absolute maximum potential out of the car and from yourself as well. Like, for example, Nico Rosberg had to find extra amounts of time in order to beat Hamilton just through doing meditating, and it was a massive psychological battle, obviously, because Rosberg was beaten by Hamilton, and I think that had a bit of a drain on him for future seasons against him, especially back in karting and into the early Formula when they were together. They were racing each other a lot, and he kind of beat him a bit, so having that issue kind of supersedes that. So the next report that we have is, and this is one of the biggest pieces of news in the last week, is F1 factory shutdown time is doubled. Now we know we've had the F1's summer break delayed almost, but back to this amount of time, so it would have been about 4 weeks long, I think, something like that. And that means that frees the opportunity for F1 Liberty Media to discuss opportunities to put more races into that time. And we've seen that with the provisional calendar. F1 doesn't actually say that it's an official calendar, but from what we can tell, they're doing a lot of double races in Austria, Great Britain. We have not got one in Italy yet, but I'm keeping my fingers crossed we do get one in Monza, because that would be sick. Obviously, because of the corona situation, that might not be guaranteed, but you know, it wouldn't really be a Formula 1 season without Monza, would it? Braun went on to say, we're working our way through all the requirements to make sure to operate in a safe environment. Unfortunately, you'll be without fans, which is a great shame, but we will still feel we can take the race out to all the fans who watch on TV and other means. It's important for us to try and get the season going. There are many reasons for wanting to start the season. One is obviously to excite the fans. who have all been frustrated by the delays. We've got a very exciting season in front of us, but it's a very important livelihood for thousands of people. It's another reason for another kickstart to the season. Now, Braun went on to say this is quite an important part of the season, obviously, just being able to step back and actually look at what is happening in terms of the planning, because Australia was planned really badly. We had that whole fiasco. I remember because I was at university sitting in the library with my friends, and I was just like, is it happening? Is it happening? Is it happening? I was just getting those Sky Sports telling me it was happening, BBC telling us it wasn't happening, and there was that whole fiasco between the media, and then they finally agreed just like hours before the first practice session it wasn't happening, which is a great shame, because all those people that bought tickets were messed about, all the staff and caterers and all the safety inspectors and all those kind of people working on track to make the event happen were kind of put under pressure to actually make the event happen under like extreme amounts of time, and then they get told it's cancelled last thing, so that means all their efforts have gone to waste just through their indecisive actions, which is a bit of a shame. But now they've actually thought about what they're saying, and they're actually making the decisions before things happen. It makes it a lot easier for them going forward to actually discuss things with the fans. Now, the last thing I want to discuss is the Spanish GP reinstated for the summer. So basically what is happening with that is essentially we have the Spanish GP that was put back. Obviously it was postponed, but now that is a possibility of it coming back for a future race. So I'm hoping that it comes back. It's not one of my favourite races, but it's definitely not one of the worst races on the calendar, France, for example. But it would be great to see Spain back on the calendar, especially with these new regulations coming in. If Spain stays on the calendar for the next 3 years, we could see some really, really good races there, because they've got tight corners, they've got fast right-hand apexes. We can see drivers get incredible starts, overtaking quite easily. I think they've reduced the ability they've increased the ability, to overtake by about 20% with these new regs. So if you get Fernando Alonso style Mario Kart launch off the grid, you'll be able to see like drivers having absolutely quantum physics starts that can't be explained by any single individual. So that would be absolutely incredible to see. Now, the last thing I want to discuss is the possibility of Vettel staying with Ferrari. Now, there's been a lot of debate recently in the news, stirred up by the asylum seekers in the Formula 1 paddock recently, for a lot of the drivers wanting to go to Ferrari. Daniel Ricciardo is definitely one of those people, I believe, that want to go to Ferrari. You know, he's got Italian heritage. He's been in the Red Bull family for so long, and obviously now that he's out he's a free agent, so it makes sense that if his contract ends at the end of this season, this is a complete open door for him if he wants it, and but if only Vettel wants to leave. Carlos Sainz is another option, in my opinion. I think he's slightly overrated. I think the performance he put in McLaren was absolutely no doubt brilliant, but at the same time, you look back at performances at Renault, which I'm not saying he didn't do a good job. He did a great job at Renault, but he got beaten by Nico Hülkenberg, and he was dropped out of the sport for a driver who hasn't really proven himself yet. He's driven against Perez, and in the 2 seasons together, one season Perez beat him both. I think it was qualifying and the race. It was close in qualifying, but he got beaten in the race. And in 2018, Ocon was kind of hindered by a few reliability smidges, but I think overall in qualifying he was far superior to Perez, and I remember just like looking back at the highlights and seeing him absolutely storm him. So Ocon definitely, I wouldn't say deserves to be in Formula 1 over Hülkenberg, but if Hülkenberg is out of F1, then you've got to kind of question Sainz's presence in F1 and whether he definitely deserves to go to Ferrari or not. But I think Giovinazzi, you know, if he can keep up with Kimi a little bit more and maybe beat him, hopefully, as Kimi's getting into his advancing years. Obviously, he's not old, but in Formula 1 years, he might be considered getting on a little bit. I think if he can really put a challenge to Kimi and beat him over the course of a season, and like strongly in the form that Sebastian Vettel did when they were at Ferrari together, I honestly could see Giovinazzi at Ferrari maybe in the next couple of years, and that will obviously free up the seat for people like Mick Schumacher, Robert Schwartzman, and Marcus Armstrong to come through into the lower parts of Formula 1 and make themselves worthy of a top seat maybe later in their careers. But yeah, getting back to other drivers that could be driving for Ferrari, you know what I'm going to say. Fernando Alonso. He has been on the radar of top drives ever since he retired back in 2016, and no matter what drive it is, with whatever team that's sort of somewhat competitive, he has always been discussed as a potential option for a drive. Now, I'm not saying he hasn't got talent, but he's been out the sport for a long time, and will Ferrari really want to put a top line driver against another top line driver when they've already got that with Sebastian Vettel? And also there's the fact that 2007 McLaren, him against Hamilton, stirred up a lot of controversy and absolutely split the camp in the team, and you don't want that kind of dynamic. If, in all honesty, Ferrari want the kind of dynamic where you have a first driver and a second driver, and the second driver just obeys what the team says and allow the first driver to win, which doesn't sound very like brilliant racecraft or fair racing, if you want to put it that way. But it's the way Ferrari do things, and if it's in the blood of their sport and it's in their heritage, they're going to keep doing it that way. And therefore I see if Vettel wants to leave Ferrari, he'll either go to McLaren or Renault. I think it'll be McLaren because that looks way more tempting when the Mercedes engine's coming through. Also, Renault going backwards and Ricciardo not having much progress with the team, I can't really see why Vettel would want to go to Renault, so I think McLaren will be the best bet. But I think it's more likely that Vettel will stay for Ferrari for at least 2021 and maybe even 2022. I think Vettel is a very talented driver. I think he's still got a championship or two in him. I would love to see him win a championship for Ferrari. You know, I kind of had the thought if 2019 went a bit differently, Vettel could have been challenged for a title. He had quite a few reliability sniggers. Hopefully that doesn't hamper his 2020 season, obviously, because it's a small season. I think this championship is blown wide open. Anyone's got the opportunity to win a race or a championship. I think it's anyone's game at this point. Car development pretty much out the window. Obviously teams are banned from developing the cars, I believe, and they're also banned developing the chassis for 2021 because they've got to use the same chassis. So whatever they turn up with in 2020, they develop it, they most likely will be in a very similar sort of pecking order for 2021. So hopefully there's a lot more variation. Hopefully it's a lot closer in the midfield and at the top, because we really don't want to see another year of 2016 style Mercedes domination, run away 30 seconds down the road and never see you again kind of thing. But hopefully we'll get a lot closer racing, and we'll have a lot better racing for years to come, especially with the new regulations. So that is all I've got for you for now. Please like and subscribe if you like the video. Feel free to leave comments about any improvements, because obviously it's my first video. It's not going to be probably up to the standard that you guys were expecting or I would require myself, but hopefully in future videos we can improve that with your help and the support of my friends who obviously watch my videos, and they've given me some great ideas, so feel free to give some feedback in the comments. I have been Forever Motorsport, and I will see you next time.